Good evening and welcome to another developer interview here on Game Wisdom and for our Perceptive podcast series. My guest tonight is a developer working on the FPS Alien Boom Boom. They have a background not only doing development with Unity, but also playing first-person shooters at the competitive level. And they are on to talk about the project and anything else that may happen to pop up. So please welcome to the podcast, David Vallieres. Sorry. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. And yourself?
I am hanging in there. It's a peak summer allergy season around here when we're recording this, so that's always fun.
Yeah.
But
without being too specific, whereabouts, like regional?
I'm New Jersey, lovely on the East Coast in the United States.
All right. I'm in Ontario, so I get this. I get the allergy thing. It's hot, humid, and there was some allergies. Yeah.
Always a great combination. But thank you for reaching out and wanting to come on and talk about your game and game dev. As I was telling David, and for everyone watching, I'm always looking for guests for this series. So if you have an upcoming game you want to talk about, just want to hang out and talk game dev, I am always here and ready and willing and able. But David, we did check out, I believe, the demo for Alien Boom. I want to say at least a month or two ago. Could be a little bit longer. Again, time is very weird around here when it comes to covering games.
My guess would be almost 3.5 months ago. I think I released the original demo mid-April, and I did a little bit of outreach by just going into some streams. That's where I found your stream, actually. I'd been watching a few of yours before, and I knew that you covered a few indie games, so I'm like, you know what? I'll just throw it out there. And you played it right on your channel live. So that was great. It's great to see feedback, right? As a developer, you love to see people playing something for the first time, and especially like if you haven't even heard of it before. That's almost greater depth because you're not coming in with any preconceived notions. You haven't seen any dev talks on it. You haven't seen anything. So yeah, it's always a pleasure.
Yep, and we're recording this on a Wednesday night. As soon as I'm done chatting with David, I'll be doing my... Oh, I'm sorry, it's Thursday, so I'm completely forgot. Yesterday was our indie show, because again, time is very flexible around here. But yesterday we played a bunch of indie games, and I like to go into a lot of these games as blindly as I can. One, because it's great to kind of get first eyes on it, and two, I think it's really great for me play testing and kind of analysis point of view, that you can look at a game and just kind of see, kind of like work your way through it at that time. And it's a skill I think is very hard to kind of cultivate if you're not like accustomed to it.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think I've ever played a game completely blind, actually.
And here I do it like at least once a week now with all the games I keep playing. So we certainly have a good amount of stuff to talk about, and I was playing this game back in April. That meant I was probably either wrapping up or just in the middle of working on my book on shooters. And that book is due out, I believe, in September now. I'm really excited about it. But yeah, like, I have played lots and lots of shooters, mostly of the non-competitive variety, and I definitely want to chat with you a little bit about kind of like the differences between those two universes later on in this conversation. But to get the ball rolling, since this is your first time on the cast, David, could you talk a little bit about kind of like who you are and what is your background when it comes to game dev?
Sure. I mean, where to start? Probably just being a kid. I'm almost 40, so I'm up there in age. My dad had an interest in computers when I was younger. He sold computers and did some light IT work on them, some networking. So I always had access to the latest PC specifically. So 386, 486, Pentium. Maybe our home computers went all the way up to Pentium 4, and that's when I took over. And it's like, that was on me to buy my computers. Had a Nintendo. Nintendo was sold, actually, because one day I was playing Mario, and I was very far, and back in the old day, there was no saves. So when my parents said go to bed, I said, no, I'm near the end. I'm at the last boss. They let me play it out. I don't believe I actually won. I went to bed. The next morning, my Nintendo was gone. My parents were very strict in that sense. So I think that kind of lit a fire in me for the rest of my life. Having something that you love kind of taken away from you like that. But to be honest, though, after that, I still ended up having access to the PC, and there was a lot of gaming moments there. So kind of was raised with Sierra games, King's Quest, Space Quest. I'm sure Leisure Suit Larry was there, but I didn't get to play it, not officially. Got some Doom, Wolfenstein, Blake Stone, the Apogee games, with Jazz Jackrabbit, and Hugo's House of Horrors, all those sort of, I guess, with late 80s, early 90s games, sort of raised on that, and just really loved that. I love that I got to sort of learn how to type on DOS in those old Quest games, and also got the hankering for FPSs, right? All the way up to about Duke Nukem, I'd say. I even got to play that on the non-adult mode. So yeah, I definitely have a long history of gaming from being a child, and then sort of a love of gaming as I grew up. Had the Sonys, the N64s, all the other PC games. Got into StarCraft, Tribes, Diablo, Wake, Half-Life, which then brought me to Counter-Strike, which then brings me to the competitive scene in my high school days. And also my first little bits of game development, because I dabbled in some level design, some map development with the Hammer tool set in Half-Life to make some Counter-Strike maps. So I made a few competitive maps. And I also decompiled some already known and popular competitive maps to see through the walls, so that my team, being as competitive as we were, could find out all the wall bang spots to gain that sort of competitive advantage, right? So that was my first sort of taste of the game design, was being like, I like Counter-Strike a lot. Oh, people make maps. Oh, maybe I can learn how to make maps. And then kind of just spending a lot of time on that. And yeah, I'd say that's pretty much the history. I've been around since 386s, and I've probably played most of the popular games of the popular genres up until now. But the last 15, 20 years have been mostly PC oriented. I still watch all the games that come out for the PlayStation and the Xbox. I know about them, but I haven't played much since maybe the Xbox 360. I had one of those, and I bought a PS4 and sold a PS4 just to play like the big ones, right? The Spider-Man, the Red Dead at the time, was a God of War. There was a PlayStation 4 era. PlayStation had a really good run of exclusives that just made sense for me to buy the console for a bit. And now, so now I'm at a phase where I'm still playing PC games, but I'm developing a lot more, because there's no time for both. Like, there's time for both, but it's like an 80-20 split. And I'm actually finding myself playing in the pitch here for Valve, the old Steam Deck, which is crazy for me because I've always been a mouse and keyboard person. But I'm finding I'm playing a lot more of my library now, just going, like the end of the night, I'm like, you know what? I've done enough dev all day, because I'm also like a developer as my job, right? So I'm like, I'm going to go sit down on the couch and play some deck. I'm playing Dread Delusion right now, which is kind of like a little bit of homework for me, because my next game I'm thinking of doing a Kingsfield like. So I'm kind of playing through the library of games that have been inspired by that, to sort of get a feel of what where the bar is, and trying to figure out specifically. Right now, I'm kind of thinking about the combat, like where I can go with that, how big something should be as an indie developer, like what's the experience, what's the scope, etc. Anyways, that's maybe for later in the conversation. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Sort of playing a little bit of my Steam Deck, doing a lot of dev, raising a kid, working, and once in a while playing a game online with a buddy. Hell Let Loose, I've been playing that a little bit, which is pretty good as World War II games go. But time consuming, right? Multiplayer games, they give you the same thing over and over, and they just take your time. So as much as I love them, I'm starting to like ease off of them a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Speaking about Kingsfield, did you play or hear a Lunacid yet?
So I watched a walkthrough of Lunacid, and I've played it a little bit of it myself. Being that I watched the walkthrough, I kind of get it, and I played about maybe an hour and a half of it, just to get a feel for the combat and just for the flow, the movement and stuff. I can grok a game pretty quickly if I watch. I do that a lot now, being like from a dev point of view. I'll watch maybe someone on Twitch play it, or I'll watch review, and then like I'm building games in my Steam library that I've only ever played like 1, 2, or 3 hours of. Right, I'll grok it, like I'll go in, I'll understand it, I'll get the feel for it, and hopefully that becomes part of the tool set for future games. Nice. But yeah, Lunacid is pretty interesting. There's some interesting concepts going on there. It's definitely a Kingsfield like. And yeah, a few things I would do differently, but that's great. That's why there's different devs and different games. Yeah.
And yeah, at some point, maybe if you're free in the future, we can talk about dungeon crawlers and kind of like that first-person melee combat in the future, because there is a whole lot we can certainly discuss on that.
Yeah, point. I'd love to have that chat, because one is like I want to make that game, and games take so long to make, and I think it's really healthy to have conversations before you go and put in 2 years. That's about the dev cycle for games that I'm making. Alien Boom Boom is at about 1.5 years now, but that's like part-time, right? That's part-time. So I'd say like it's more close to maybe 6 months of full-time development, maybe even 4 or 5 months. But yeah. So like, I definitely want to, like I said, I want to play through some of these games, have some design discussions, and the whole first-person. Surprisingly, there's not a lot of these games, and that's also why I'm kind of interested, because I think they're actually really cool, even though I haven't really played a lot of the modern ones. I remember Kingsfield, and even games like Morrowind and Elder Scrolls. There's a certain amount of I don't know. I wouldn't want to just say. I don't know the exact word to put to it. There's just like a presence that you feel in these games that you don't quite get in like third-person fantasy games, which there's an abundance of. There's an abundance of first-person fantasy games. That actually reminds me of like EverQuest. Like I started playing EverQuest early high school, bought a Voodoo 2. I had no clue what I was doing. I was one of the worst players because I was still like 12 or 13. But did I get sucked into that game? Just like playing first-person mode specifically. And I know like if you want to really like macro the game and play for that like that competitive edge, you probably want to go third person so you can control your character better. But there's nothing more immersive than that first person fantasy view, I think.
Yep. And it's also why for a lot of the more like immersive like FPS games, I was even thinking of, as we were talking about, is like stuff like going back to like Condemned and Fear back in the 2000s. This idea that is your viewpoint, and you are in that decrepit environment. Like, you don't see a character model, you don't see where your character is. You're just looking right through them, and there's so much to like segue to like talk about like horror and FPS design in that respect.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that like in one way, FPS games like on the surface should have as much immersion as the first person fantasy, whether you're swinging swords and shields or a little bit of magic or whatever. But maybe like the first person shooters have slightly less immersion, at least the big action ones, because you just shoot all your problems away, right? Like there's it's over there. The problem's over there. And also I'd say like it's not as intimate. Like first person shooters, you're a lot of them are fast, right? There are some slower ones. This is true, and I actually find those games do have a different flavor. But a lot of the majority of them that are popular are faster, and the scenery is just a blur, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you're not there, you're not situated there. It's just a backdrop for you to shoot grenades and do, like, gain your hero power and grab the flag or hit the objective or whatever it is, right? Plant the bomb, win the round. Like, gameplay is king in a lot of first-person shooters that are very, especially the multiplayer ones. Gameplay is king, and even though some of them are gorgeous and beautiful, you can't like allow yourself to actually be present in that area. Where, like, just playing through Dread Delusion, for instance, I'm present there. Like, I've like, and that's hard for me. Like, someone like me, I actually have a hard time immersing myself in any games. It takes a lot, but I'm finding, like, wow, I'm present there. Like, I want to know more about the story. What, like, I don't know if you've played it or not, so I don't want to give too much away, but it's there. There's enough dialogue, there's enough lore, and you're just kind of there. Like, this is a world, there's just inhabitants here, and this is cool. I don't know. So I'm kind of like, I'm excited about doing something like that going forward.
And it's that kind of like difference in feel. That was a huge part that I talked about in the book on shooter design, that you can, just because you have 5 different FPSs doesn't mean they all play and feel the same way. As some really good points. I mean, this year alone, the last few years, I have played everything from Doom Eternal to Dusk to Hunt Showdown. We recently played Relentless Frontier. Like, there's just an enormous amount of variety, and it's also, I think, why the bar has really gone so high in terms of FPS design. Whether you're making a single player or a story-driven one, or a multiplayer competitive one, it's very hard, I think, to sometimes contextualize what separates a game like a Counter-Strike or a Halo from something like a Doom or a Half-Life and so on.
Absolutely, yeah. It's funny, like, knowing, so people who don't play too many first-person shooter games or whatever, they could look at a COD and a Battlefield and a Counter-Strike and be like, that's the same game. But people in the know are like, no, like, those games are completely different. They all have different objectives, they have different gameplay, the gun feel is completely different. Even though, like, from the outside, it looks like the recoil is the same and everything. Like, no, like, the whole feel is different. The skill sets you need for each game is different. And it's a very interesting. I think that's my favorite part about game development is the implementation details.
Yep.
It's absolutely like the most interesting, like, for me anyways, but that's because I'm like a dev and I'm interested in that. I'm sure you are too, with all, like, your giant library of design talks and reviews and everything. It's a pretty cool thing.
And as you're talking about, like, people who can look at, like, 2 shooters and they see the same thing, like, I've had this conversation, like, infinitely about, like, platformers, and how a lot of people will look at a platformer and go, oh, they're all just like Mario, or every platformer is the same, or my favorite, 2D is very easy to do, and it is certainly not. And again, it's very easy, I think, for a lot of people to look at, like, a platformer. I think I even compared shooters to platformers in the respect that because the genres have been around so long, that a lot of people feel like everything's been done already, that it's been solved, that you don't need to, like, look at too much else. Just look at Doom, look at Halo, and there's your shooter, or look at Mario and there's your platform.
Yeah, that's the thing, is, like, absolutely nothing's ever going to be solved. In fact, yes, there's going to be a whole bunch of games that are very similar, and of course there's going to be the saturation of like experiences. Yeah, and that's not going to be great for the developers making them. I mean, I'm guilty of that. Alien Boom Boom is a tropey game. It's based off, like, where I started the design. It's not where it's ending up, and where it's ending up is very tropey and similar. And that actually haunts me, but I'm still going to finish it because it's, like, the game that I said I will finish. I have so many, like, thrown out prototypes, right? In the, like, 8 years, I guess, now that I've been with Unity. And so, like, Alien Boom Boom is the game where I go, like, no, I'm finishing it. It's going to take this time, and I'm always going to just finish games going forward. It doesn't matter, whatever. And I'm not saying I'm not proud of it, and it's not, there's not something fresh there, and that's me. But it's tough. Like, first-person shooters, there's always something you could do differently, and it's definitely not solved. But there's a big trap of, like, doing the same thing. right? But just look at that game. It's called the Beast. It's the Beast Within, or the I'm Your Beast. So I'm Your Beast.
Yeah.
I am
the one beast. From Strange Scaffold.
Strange Scaffold, like that. What? That's an excellent game. I played the demo, and it's short. It's to the point. It's a first-person shooter, but it does its own thing, and it doesn't follow. It's not a formula I've ever played. I know there's a few things similar to it, but it's actually kind of funny because another game just came out that like really retro. What's that other one that just came out where it's basically a time trial and you're running through it really quickly, and just came out. First person shooter.
Not Neon White, right? I think that one came out.
No. It literally just came out like a few months ago or a month ago, and it got like rave. You'll know it once I see it. I just like I can't remember the having a hard time remembering.
We're both doing like game fact checking at the same time.
I know, yeah, that's fine. It's everyone watching this is guilty of it. It's very retro in it, and what you are is like you're this guy and you run through levels, and they're only like 2-minute levels or minute levels, and you get these time every time you kill someone, your time goes up. I just can't think of it.
Steam is not.
There's too many. Well, there's too many games on Steam. It's good for everyone else, but for indie devs, it's definitely a little bit of a problem to get seen. Anyways, we can go to the next thing.
Yeah.
We'll figure
Maybe someone will figure out in the comments when this cast goes up. Hopefully we'll find by the time this cast goes up.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
I guess so. One thing that I definitely want to ask you about, going back to what I was saying a few minutes ago about kind of FPS design, is like the difference between designing a competitive shooter in terms of feel and making more of a single player or story-driven shooter by feel. Now, as you said earlier, of course, you play competitive Counter-Strike, you got really into that respect of it. For people listening to us right now who have not played or experienced Alien Boom Boom, what kind of feel or gunplay were you aiming for with it?
Okay, so this is where, as an indie, you can pivot quicker than other. Yeah, you can basically pivot as an indie, and I kind of did. I set out to make Alien Boom Boom, a game that used all of my favorite guns from the competitive shooters that I used to play, right? Counter-Strike, a little bit of COD, Quake, and some of that DNA is still in Alien Boom Boom. But the problem is that those games all have very different feeling guns, and the enemy design needed to actually to design the guns so that that the enemies made sense for all of the guns. It was actually really, really tough. And people were also kind of telling me like, wow, it's really hard to shoot people. Like the recoil on that pistol is like too crazy. I'm like, yeah, it's like Counter-Strike recoil. And someone actually pointed this out to me, and they said like, Counter-Strike people are probably going to just want to play Counter-Strike, and everyone else who really enjoys the Counter-Strike recoil, they're probably not playing it first-person indie games. And it's true. It really is true. Like they are different crowds. So I had to like change and dial back the amount of recoil, and it's like I spent time like really figuring it out. Like I had my one gun shooting like a Glock, and the other one shooting like an AK, like. But I had to bring it back. I had to be like, you know what? No, this doesn't make sense. It's actually kind of like it's an anti-pattern. You know, there's just like it's a cursed problem right now that I'm facing. So I kind of just went like, you know what? It's fine. I'm gonna bring it back. And then I just made. So now I basically like scaled the game back. I made it a lot easier. There's still challenge, of course, but I set out to make a hard game for competitive like people who are good at first-person shooters, like really good at them. And I was there in the first iteration, and then people played it, and they were like, "This is way too hard." And then I was like, "But I can get through it." And then So then I dialed it back, and now my sort of new philosophy in it is just like, and this was also part of it too early on, but like it's in the name, Alien Boom Boom. Like, no, let's go back just to embrace that piece, which is like, let's just be ridiculous. Like, I want things to explode. I want things like when you hit an enemy, I want them to go flying. I want the shotgun to be super powerful. I don't want you to feel weak with any gun. So I basically went from this game's going to be hard and there's still going to be cool explosive moments that you earn to this game is just going to be all about pushing that sort of like, if there's going to be any gimmick to this game, in the end, it's just going to be about like, it's going to be a lot of flying enemies because of the bullets that you put into them. And that's where like this sort of Alien Boom Boom, I guess, name now earns its keep. So I'm trying to add, so basically like that's the new design philosophy of the game is you're going to go in, you're going to have this like little story. It's going to be told to you. You're going to enjoy it. You're going to feel powerful, and you're going to get to the end. And even to that point, I've like added slow-mo into the game now. Why? Because it's fun, right? Like I remember playing Max Payne and being like, I could be slow-mo all day. I'm happy with this. So I'm basically like putting in, like that's like a main crux now of the game too, where when you kill enough enemies, you collect, power, and then that lets you hit your dash, which brings you into a slow-mo. You're fast still, everyone else slows down, and then it becomes like cinematic, right? You shoot someone, you see them slowly like, fly away type thing. So that's where I'm at now. Sadly, it's actually gone away from the whole competitive piece, but I'm happy with it. So I don't have much to say in terms of the competitive piece to a single player game, other than maybe competitive style first person shooters don't necessarily belong in story driven or light experiences that an indie dev can make. And maybe they do, who knows.
And like with the idea of the difficulty side of FPS, like that's another very challenging point, no pun intended, because again, everyone has very different skill levels when it comes to reflex driven design. We've seen this with everything from Doom to Ultra Kill to just pick any kind of shooter. As a very interesting point, we just played through on stream the Quake mod, the Immortal Lock, that was released by like someone who's like relatively new to the whole scene, and they made this just like magnum opus of masochism if you play it on the highest difficulty. Like, they throw so many enemies in at one point that the engine just can't handle it. Like, the engine just stops functioning.
Yeah. Wow.
And it can get, like, for a lot of people who play FPSs, it's very hard sometimes to measure what skill means when it comes to what you want to throw at a player. And level design, of course, is a major factor in this. You put like a player in like a room in Quake with like 47 shamblers with no walls, they're going to be in for a horrible time. But you could just have 10 shamblers in a room with tons of walls. It could be a very easy experience. For
it's
yeah. Oh, go ahead. Okay. What I was going to ask you is like for Alien Boom Boom and kind of like your own play testing and working on the game. How did you how were you factoring in like how easy or how hard you wanted to make the game?
Yeah, so again, when I first started, I was the kind of test for it, right? I'm like, I want a game that's hard, that's going to be my niche thing, that's going to be and then I realized like, oh no, that's actually, that really turns a lot of people off. A lot of people that would buy my indie game are actually not first person shooters people. I know there's like a lot of boomer shooter people, but my game is not quite a boomer shooter. It kind of gets lumped in there a little bit, but it's not quite a boomer shooter. And it has a different, what I was building for had a different skill set. Because you're even saying, right, with these, you kind of said like these sort of Twitch-based like shooter games, with the, you need dexterity, this and that. These are completely different skill sets even between a lot of the games you mentioned. Counter-Strike needs very fine aim, very fast and very fine aim to hit that like 3 pixel head consistently. It needs a lot of positioning, so like a lot of tactical sort of thought too. And I would say movement is like the least amount. Like if you're thinking of like strategy, aim, movement, and then also with aim, it'd be like, are you aiming just fast, really quickly? Do you have to like track a lot? Because like, there's not a lot of tracking in Counter-Strike either. Like you can, but like you're probably not winning at the highest level if you're like holding and tracking someone forever, because you need to kill them within the first like few seconds or half second of tracking, otherwise you're gonna die. Where a game like Quake is all about tracking, like making sure that you're always ready to hit that rail shot. It's also about predictive shooting, right? You're predicting with your grenades or your rocket launcher or your plasma gun, because they're not hit scan. So that's a whole other thing, right? Hit scan versus projectiles, and that sort of, those are completely different. And then Quake has the whole movement thing too. Like in Quake, your movement is incredibly important. How you're taking advantage of the physics in the engine, how you're squirming away from their bullets, your positioning, and depending on the mode you're playing, like you even knowing the maps when the new items are going to get done. So that's a whole other skill set, right? Which I think is really interesting, right? COD, I'd say somewhere in between Quake and Counter-Strike in terms of movement, and in terms of aim, I'd say it's closer to Quake, in fact, than Counter-Strike, in terms of actually you do need just really good tracking, because you're not instant killing people in COD. You need to sustain, right? You need to sustain your shots on them, just like in Quake or in Unreal or something like that. Yeah, the original question was, I forget the original question.
I guess like trying to balance like difficulty.
Yeah. So
Alien Boom Boom.
Exactly. Yeah. So going to that, like I initially went for the Counter-Strike feel, right, with like a railgun in there and like a grenade launcher, like to mix it up a little bit. But a lot of my guns took a lot of recoil control, and I also had the movement piece. So I was basically balancing for that, and I was like the litmus test, because like I know my skill set, right? But then when I got it out into people's hands, and especially a lot of the people that would be interested in my game, I realized no, it wasn't necessary for them. So now what I do is I'm actually first aiming so that the gunfights themselves, they're just visually fun. That and also I'm getting the timing right, so like it's not just constant fighting. Like there's a little bit of a breathing, like some breaths here and there between the next moments. And from there, I make it so it's actually pretty easy to kill these things, and then I'm dialing it back a little bit. So I'm going like, here's the first thing. I'm making it easy enough to see people get through, and then I'm making sure that like, okay, like no one has to get this health. Like this health is not being used. This health is not being used. They have way too much ammo here. So that's sort of like my new way of balancing. Is I kind of just do the thing that I think might work, and the encounters that I think will have a good rhythm. And I'm erring to the side actually a little bit easier. Because the game is like not going to be the most replayable game, and I don't want to get people, and really like also visually, there's gorgeous games out there, and my game can't compete, right? What my game can do is give you a tempered but fun sort of romp through a story. There's always going to be like someone. I don't think you played the version of it actually, but I have like a new voice I have a new voiceover like artist that I've been working with, and we're like telling a story through the whole level. So every level you're going to be hearing a conversation between the protagonist and this mystery voice in your head, and it's going to be laying out the story, giving you some background, telling you where to go. Kind of like Bastion. You ever played Bastion?
Oh yes.
How there was always that. So it's not going to be as great as that, right? Like that's like the bar for narration, I think, while you're playing a game. But that's kind of what I'm going for, like a smaller version of that. So now my game is more like, I really want it to be an experience. I want some kind of cool set pieces. I want it, when you go through it the first time, there's some surprises. And I don't want you to have to struggle and see that surprise 5-10 times because you can't get past it. I want you to be able to get past it. Mm-hmm. Actually, in my university, I did it. I went to school for computer science, and I also took a specialization of game design as a sort of like minor specialization. So it was a computer science degree, but then I did a specialization in game design, which allowed me to actually write a thesis in game development and game design. And for that, I made a small little game, and I created an AI for it that would actually balance the game depending on how good or how bad you were at a game. To the point where my partner, Tracy, who never plays games and doesn't like games at all, she was able to beat the level in 18 minutes because it rebalanced to her skill level. And then the person who is self-reported as really, really good at these types of games also was beat the level in around 16 minutes, which was great because like it showed that you could basically take a level and you can balance it with AI. So if people die, it kind of calculates, oh, what killed you? Let's make that easier. Da, 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 da. And you can make a game so that people who are really great and people who are not so great can still get through that experience, right? To experience the level at the pace that the narrator designer wanted you to sort of experience that game in. And that's a big difference between something that's supposed to be competitive and hard and get good compared to like an experience that you're supposed to have one time. You know, it's like a book you've read. Maybe you'll read it again in a few years. Those are different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where Alien Boom Boom is now. I'm realizing that's actually a better place for it to live. And I think just financially speaking, I think I can actually make more money off of a little game that anyone can play and sort of enjoy, rather than try to like compete with some niche, like these are for the pro, this game's for the gamers. And to be honest, the presentation doesn't say programmer either. The presentation of Alien Boom is very cartoony, and it says like, come have some fun. So that's where I'm at with the balance, sort of the pillar for deciding how hard something gets.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and going back to the point you were saying earlier about kind of like being able to aim and track in a shooter like Call of Duty versus Counter-Strike, or even, you know, Doom and Quake, that is always like one of the more fascinating aspects of like FPS design. Like, I can play a game like Ultra Kill on like almost the highest difficulty and do really well in it. I am absolutely terrible when it comes to Counter-Strike or Call of Duty. Like, I just am completely horrible at that. And I think a lot of that is just like how the feel is so different between these games. And to the point you were just saying about trying to balance, I want to make a first-person shooter, but I still want to make something that the majority of people can play. It's a very tough line to walk for a lot of developers when it comes to like reflex-driven design.
Yeah, I mean, it's not where I started out, and it's just where I am now. I just want to finish the game. I want to get about 6 levels in, and I just want to like, just make it like open. But this is what's crazy is like my next games. I don't want to do that again. Like I don't want to. I actually want to go really niche again for the like I said. I want to make like a Kingsfield like clone, not a clone. That's wrong. That's a completely wrong thing to say. I'm figuring out what are the pieces from the first-person fantasy genre, first-person fantasy action-adventure genre. What are the pieces there that I'm yearning for, that other people are yearning for? Like, where is my little niche there? Mm-hmm. Is it the difficulty thing? I don't necessarily think that's it for me. I think it's like the immersion thing. So like that's what I'm kind of like learning now. It's like it's the immersion and just the theme, and you can just really get, I think, there's like an intimacy to that sort of game. And so for my next game, I actually want to go really niche again. It's just this time like not go niche to a place where I need to take people from the competitive Counter-Strike and be like, this game is like a good target practice for you, because they don't care. They don't care about me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just like trying to like figure out or distill what you want in like a reflex-driven game is a very challenging aspect of it, just by the fact that, again, everyone has very different skill levels and very different approaches to how you're building the game, how your guns are supposed to feel, and even how your level design works. And since we didn't touch on level design yet, I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about that. Or what was kind of like the approach you're taking with building like the levels and the arenas for Alien Boom Boom?
Yeah, so the whole Alien Boom Boom thing came from, for some reason, I just like, I don't even like baseball particularly, and I don't even play it or anything. But I guess that baseball was in my head, and I was like, well, what if people are playing a baseball game and then there's an invasion mid-baseball game? that was just there, and I had to do it. So that was it. So that really informed what the level design was going to be like, which was, and maybe this is why my game's more of like a half like than a boomer shooter, is that I wanted some like grounding in reality to the places that you were going to fight through in my game. I wanted it to be a place that you thought was real, right? So every level I'm making is not an arena, and is not a level or like a map. Like those are all like terms. I mean, you have to say them at some point on a technical level, yes, but like I wouldn't see them as like at all like a quick level, a Doom level, or arena or anything. They're very much situated in a real grounded place that you're going to be fighting through. So like in the first demo level that you can play through right now, you start in the baseball diamond, you get invaded, you wake up and there's aliens on the field, you have a bat and you go and smack them, you get your first pistol because there's a dead there's like a dead Men in Black guy there. You grab his pistol, you go through the rest of the level, you find a shotgun, you find another gun, and you're kind of, it's a little bit linear, but it doesn't look linear. That's kind of like another thing that I'm trying to do, is like trying to make these open spaces that eventually you do have like a very set path to go through, but there's a little, you know, there's a little bit of, there's a few dead ends and stuff too that you can explore, but they feel open though. Like you can always kind of see where you are, you can see where you're going, and it's a real place. But I'm using, you know, certain techniques of level design to kind of still guide you. So that's where I'm at for the Alien Boom Boom. Like you get that first level, your baseball diamond, you go through this community center. If you look at the start, the community center is like all brick there. If you look, once you're invaded, there's a giant gaping hole that becomes an entrance you have to go in, and you go through like the ruins of the community center. You get to the roof, you fight more shit, and eventually you get to a UFO. It's up there. That UFO brings you to a portal into this like other UFO that's in space, and then from there, that's the end of the level. And my thing is that you're going to just be hopping through portals to these new locales. So the level I'm working on right now is like you're on this like Mars, and it's like the face, you know, the Mars face. And there's like temples there, and there's like old alien ruins. There's going to be a few new enemies there, but you're also going to find maybe some like, yeah, I don't want to give too much away there, but it's still grounded in like, it's not an arena. It's like you're going to go through this experience. There's going to be some like checkpoints that the narration's going to go through. And that's basically like the level, the sort of choices there. There's there's a story that's being told through all these levels. So I'd say like very much like a typical like modern COD game or any modern story driven shooter, just on like a smaller scale.
Okay. And to kind of build off of that, in terms of like the gunplay and the weapon designs, that's another aspect that again really feeds to a lot of this discussion about the differences between a competitive shooter versus a more like single player or story driven one. Yep. A lot of competitive shooters go for pretty much all like hit scan based attacks, very rapid fire. You're supposed to be again like drawing a bead on the enemy and keeping it painted on them. For a lot of the more single-player ones, there's more variety. We can have projectile-based, we have homing shots, bouncing shots, all the sheer variety of them. Yeah. For kind of building the weapon designs out of Alien Boom Boom, like what was kind of your approach or what you're trying to aim for?
Yeah, so again, at the start, it was just a mix of the favorite guns that I played, like in all the games I played. So my favorite Counter-Strike guns, my favorite Quake guns, my favorite Unreal guns, and just put a little bit of everything in. But like, go for the skill-based ones. But now, because I've changed sort of design halfway through, I'm still keeping these guns in, but I'm lowering the bar of difficulty and I'm making them more kind of ridiculous. Like I might redo my pistol, for instance. It's a little bit too grounded. I might actually just make it like a blaster now, like an alien blaster, and I think it'll be a lot more fun. I think people will be more into it because now I'm going away from this grounded. And I also had this idea with Alien Boom Boom early on that like I'd be very grounded. Like there's going to be a reason. Like to me, it was like almost a joke. Like I need a reason for everything, and because like games usually don't do that, and so I want to do it. Like I want to give it a reason for. And then I was like, no, like that's too much, and it doesn't make sense. And people are gonna not realize like I'm out. I wanted to do that more as a joke, and then I'm gonna realize like people think like this. He's taking this too literally. It's just a game. So now I'm kind of like I'm actually redoing some of the weapons, and I'm going more just for like exotic, right? I think that again, I want to be successful as an indie developer. This is my first game. I think I'll probably make $5,000 off of it in this lifetime. I think that's pretty fair to say. Not a lot of money, long term, for the amount of hours I've put into it. Right? I can work a minimum wage job, and I've made a lot more than what I'll make from this game, and that's cool because I'm learning so many lessons from this. Right? Mm-hmm. But right now, yeah. So like I'm pivoting a lot with this game and doing these things. But now I still do. But the decision making I am making for this is like I'm still trying to figure out like what's going to probably do best marketability now. That's where I'm at with this game. Like, what can I do to salvage this to make it somewhat marketable? So I'm taking away that Glock. I'm going to be putting in sort of like more of like a blaster. It's going to be more exciting to see. It's something people haven't seen. My shotgun, it's still going to be a shotgun because it's a good shotgun. That's the one thing I can say that's good about a game. My shotgun feels good. I have a range of where it's effective and enemies go flying and you feel powerful with it. And I think that's all you need to do with a shotgun. I'll stand by that. There's no game where there's no first person game where your shotgun shouldn't just like make you feel powerful. I think it's a good you can break that rule, but it's a really good rule, I think, for first person shooters. Shotgun's gonna stay in. The rest of the game, the rest of the guns, like I have right now in the demo, you don't get them all, but I have a pistol finished. I have a shotgun. I have a submachine gun. I have a plasma AR with a scope. That's in the demo. I have a grenade launcher, not in the demo. I have a railgun that you get to use at the end of the demo to shoot a few UFOs down. They explode and stuff. And you get to shoot. What's funny is people grab the railgun and I never see them shoot the enemies because I tell them shoot the UFO, right? Like shoot the UFO with the railgun. So they'll shoot the UFO and then they'll finish the level. And I give them a stream of enemies to come, but they always change off the railgun. And I'm like, where's your sense of adventure? Like, so that's a funny thing, right? That happens is like, as a designer, people always play the game the way you didn't intend. I'm thinking like I even give like 100 bullets at the end of the level for the railgun. It's ridiculous. I'm like, just use it. I want you to use it. It's like my favorite gun. It looks like a Quake railgun. It has a scope on it. Super powerful. It goes through everything. Everyone goes flying. No one even attempts it. They're like, oh, this is for the UFOs because you told me it's for the UFOs. And I'm like, no. So yeah, that's in. So I'm gonna put in a few more like alien tech now. Like that's what I'm gonna go with. I think I'm gonna put like a trident, sort of like a Stargate trident like blaster. I think that's what I'm gonna do for this next level. And another thing that I'll throw out there is I really contemplated what I'm gonna do with this, but because like I'm at a point where I kind of just want to finish the game. I know it's not a glowing endorsement for it. It's gonna be fun. I'm still working on it. I'm not like taking shortcuts, but I do want to kind of get it over with as well. So I thought about this a lot. Am I going to have save states in the game? Am I not? Am I going to have persistent loadouts through the game and upgrades and this and that? And where I kind of landed is I think I'm going to make it like the old style arcade, like Commander Keen games or these games where you had like your levels and you could pick, once you've got level 2, you could always just start at level 2. And level 2 just gives you a new loadout right from the start. You're going to pick up new things. And I'm going to have a reason in the game for that. Basically, every time you go through a teleporter, they basically like strip you of your weapons, and you're going to have these new loadouts. But what I kind of like about that is I'm going to tailor every experience, and every level is going to be tailored around these 3 or 4 weapons that you're going to get for this level. It's going to be a lot easier for me. In fact, I don't have to build like this whole persistence thing and then balance around that. I'm going to balance around. This is a level. This is how you experience it. You get these. I'll give you the guns and the health and everything. At the end of the level, they're all gone. This is your new loadout. You're going to have a new gun here. You're going to see an old gun, maybe 2 old guns and a new gun type thing. So that's going to be throughout the whole game. 5 or 6 levels, and you're just going to see like every level will probably introduce some new gun, and then mix some old guns in it. And I'm going to make the level and the encounters balanced around those specific things. So if anything, my game's going to be at least attempt to be a very tailored experience. Like the people who are going to go through it, it's not going to be like someone uses the plasma all the time. One person will use the rocket. One person uses everything. One person saves up all these rails no, it's going to be like everyone's going to kind of play the levels the same. And I get like some people love that ability to do whatever they want, but I think, yeah, for my game right now, what's best is that I actually kind of tailor what you get, and each level is a sort of self-contained experience. Like that's it. There's no save states. You start like there'll be some checkpoints in it, and I might even make it so each level has like a few checkpoints you can start from. And those checkpoints, you basically get the gear that I think you should be at that point, which would be basically everything you could have found beforehand type thing. So that's where I'm at now with the balance and stuff. The long-winded way explaining that. One person, you know, you gotta figure out how to do these things as one person. And I don't want to make this game for another 2 years now. Like,
yep.
I already have a new like I'm designing. I have a notebook already that I've been designing my other game. And by the way, like so much work, excited about that. But I have like a year probably to finish Alien Boom Boom. So, it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to really, you want to go to that next thing, but you have to finish the game you're working on. Yep. That's the skill you need to have as a developer, like an indie developer. You'll never get anywhere if you can continuously jump to the next project with this half-baked project, half-finished. And all my systems are finished, right? Like I can add a gun in like literally I could add a gun in 10 hours. I can model a gun. I can get a pretty decent, like I can get like the 75% there artwork for it, the animation, the projectile, how it feels. I have the whole system. Like it's easy. Like from a programming point of view, it's really, I just need to throw the assets and do like just attribute things properly. And then my system works. So, like I have most of my game is like coded. It's there, right? Like I can just add guns. I can add enemies for the most part. I have similar routines for all the AI and stuff for the enemies. So I'm at that point now. It'd be a travesty to just move on to the next thing.
Yep.
So.
And again, like there's a whole design topic right there. And it's one I've talked about a lot here on the channel about being able to grow and cultivate your skills as a designer and be able to transfer that from game to game, from project to project. And anyone who's done game design will tell you that finishing a game is one of the hardest things to do. Because locking all that down is what will separate, you know, kind of the bad, the good, and the great designers.
It's even getting to the point where I am now is like it's weird. It's unlocked so much experience. Like, because it used to be that I'd do something for like 3 months, like a prototype, a strong prototype, and then move on. I'm like a year and a half in. Like, as a programmer, I could almost wipe my hands of this game. It's all scripting now, right? The difference for people who might not know what I say when I'm saying that is like the programming. I'm talking about like the back end systems of my game, the core architecture of my game, all these sort of things, right? They're in, like the navigation, the AI, all of this stuff's in, building new levels out, putting new guns in, triggers for level, like all that stuff's there. So now I'm actually like, there's still a few things I have to add and tweak and stuff, right? But for the most part, I'm acting now as I'm building the levels. I might have to build a few new enemies, a few new guns. So I'm more of like doing the art and then the scripting. Like, yeah, sure, a level I'll still need to throw in some targets and do some scripting and say like this is going to happen, this part of the level does this, and some custom scripting for each level. But I've learned so many lessons in just architecting the game out already. And also, like, I know what not to do for my next game. Like, I just know, like, I can't do this. That was a mistake to do it this way from a programming side, but also a design side. And also with, like, Alien Boom, I came in so I'm just going to build, like, the game tropey and just not have a design doc. Like, it was just, like, everything in my game is just, like, I kind of improvise and I get to that point and then I work on it and I iterate on it. And that's actually kind of good in some ways, but it's not in other ways. And to be an efficient indie game dev, it's going to be a lot more beneficial for me to like have some solid game designs and know what my core game loop is and know what my core mechanic is and build towards those things rather than experiment too much. Like I'll be able to iterate and get more out there. And that's what I'm doing with this next sort of, like I said, like I already have this like this core idea for this fantasy first person game that the theme just lets me like lets me skip so many pieces of like, I guess, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to get too much into it because I'll just want to work on that instead. But yeah, it's crazy. By like finishing something, it's a big deal. Like the experience you get, you don't even realize the
Yeah.
And then even just like listening to you, I go back and I've watched a lot of your review videos and a lot of your sort of design talks and stuff. And it's funny because like you can hear the same words and they don't mean something to you, and then you can experience something and you can hear words again. You can be like, oh yeah, that's an interesting way of thinking about it. Oh yeah, that's why that's so important. Oh yeah. And until you play enough games or design them, yeah, that it's yeah, you need the experience.
Yep.
The analytical brain too, right? Thinking about analyzing it. Playing a game is not analyzing it, and I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, it's
because like they're different things.
Yeah, again, like I've said this many times, I've been playing video games since I was 3. I didn't really start analyzing them up until about like 2012, 2013, when I started doing more with game wisdom. It's two very different approaches to looking at a video game.
And it's hard to unlock it once you've unlocked it. It's like film, right? Like the minute you have a little bit of film theory and you think about film cinematically and story and script and plot and characters, you just like the magic is kind of gone. Like a new magic's unlocked. Like you're actually the magician now, but you're no longer in the crowd. So like the fun of it, there's a new fun there, right? And it's hard to like not be the design brain and the analytical brain. But that's fine though. Like I'm fine there. And sometimes a game surprises me and I get to turn off the analytical. It's still there, but I still can like. Dread Delusion's doing that for me right now, by the way. Cultic did that for me. In fact, that was the game where I said, wow, this guy made this, like what I should make it like a first person shooter. And I always knew this wouldn't be like it would be great if this game sold well. You know, I'm getting wish lists, it's happening, but like I have no, you know, I told myself this game is gonna cost me more to make than I'm gonna make from it. And I'm fine with that because I know that, you know, like I'll never compete. This game will never compete with Cultic. But unless I start doing something, and I know first-person shooters, right? So like, why wouldn't I just make my first game something I know? Why make it harder? If I like, I haven't played at Kingsfield like for like 20 years, and even when I did, I was like shit at them, right? Like, so that's what. Yeah, Alien Boom was like. I know first-person shooters, and I won't have to think about design elements. And when things go wrong, I can get it back on track, and I don't have to worry about that piece. I can just focus on the back end and the like. I can basically like throw out half my worries because like I'm kind of an expert in these things. At least I think I am.
Yep. And the other point that's very important to bring up is in terms of like the amount of time to spend on a game. Like that's another aspect. I think that's really changed in terms of indie dev. I've been interviewing developers now for over a decade. And for a lot of developers I spoke to, like around like 2015, 2017, they were talking about almost spend 3-5 years on this game, 7 to 8 years. Like there's a lot of like even just doing it part time, they're still spending that amount of time on one single game. And I think one of the things that we've been seeing with like developers who've been like getting in or working on projects like me in the last like 4 to 5 years have been trying to really focus more on I want to get this idea done. What can I do within a reasonable time frame? I don't want to spend 5-7 years on this game. Can I make this amazing game in 2 to 3 years, 1 to 2 years, something like that?
And that's cutting. Was it someone just? So I was on Twitter. I follow a lot of people on Twitter, and I, comment on a lot of things. I think it was, maybe George. I forget his last name. Broussard. George Broussard. He had a comment recently on a tweet, and I kind of sometimes it's cool. Like some of the people who made the games that I grew up with, they'll like talk to you on Twitter, and that's so cool. Like I love that. I love that I get to like interact with like the old guard, right? And they still have great advice, and they still have like great design ideas. But he basically said, as an indie developer, you should start thinking in ponds, not oceans. And like that's the thing, is that you can't compete. A solo developer is not going to compete with a AA or AAA studio that has 10, 20, 50, 100, 1,000 people making a similar, like you can't even approach what they can do. And And then some people do get really lucky and they spent 5 years on a game and they've built a following and then they sell like bananas. That's true. But like those are the lottery tickets that were won. And anyone else who's trying to get into this and make a sustainable thing for them, you're not going to win that lottery ticket. You might, but you shouldn't be thinking that you're the one that's going to win that lottery ticket. You should be working like in this like in this illustration that we're drawing here. You shouldn't be spending all your money on lottery tickets. You should be just working like overtime and building this thing sustainable and investing it, right? Like you should just be saving money, not thinking you win.
Yeah.
Like, so that's where I'm at, is like I want Alien Boom Boom. It's going to be like 2 years probably to release, and that's going to be too long. And my next game is because I'm getting better too with my art too, right? Like I didn't start as an artist. I learned how to do everything like so far in the last 2 years. So my next game's going to look nicer. It's going to be so much more distilled in what it is. And really, like, the holy grail is if you can get a game out that's actually fun and people enjoy and they get what you're doing and get into early access. And early access can be really bad and can be a huge trap for developers, but it can also be a really great thing to sustain and to test whether the core idea is good enough. So that's where I'm also kind of going with this next game of mine, is like, I think, especially if you're in this niche area, I think people respond to early access as long as you got your core game there and there's at least a chapter of content for them to get through to know what the rest of the game is going to be. If you look at like New Blood with their Fallen Aces game and their Gloomwood, those are all early access games. They have they're just adding chapters and chapters and chapters, and I think that's a great thing. You basically you create a chapter. Well, they're those like Fallen Aces and then Gloomwood are a little bit more open and larger experiences. I guess Gloomwood's in fact, it's like all basically open world kind of, and it's not levels. Where Fallen Aces, I guess, is just really big levels, and you get a few of them for chapter 1 or whatever. But still, there's like a self-contained experience there that's probably worth the $15 you got to get in early access. Once the game's released fully, maybe it goes up to $25. Now you got 3 episodes that make up a fuller 20-hour game, where early access gave you the 6-hour game. The core stuff's there, and there's fun there, and you're not just it's not just this broken piece of shit, which is like the whole game's there, but there's only 30% of it there, right? So I'm really thinking about that for my next game, is how can I how can you get something out as fast as you possibly can that's worth early believers purchasing your game, so that then you can maybe quit your full-time job and be wow, I just made enough money to dev for a year. I can finish this game in 6 months and then do another 6 months towards a new game. And maybe I'll even make more money on the full launch. And then boom, now you're rolling into a career that your self-sustained career. Because right now I'm a software developer too for an organization that I like working for. And I got a lot of experience actually working in some Unity stuff for them as well, and doing some game design and educational sort of stuff. But a lot of my technical skills I've built up there. But I'd love to be able to just be my own person one day and build experiences. That would be the dream, right?
Yep. But getting to that point of sustainability, that's another hour and a half to 2 hour long conversation. Yeah. We're already an hour into this recording. We could get onto that forever. And it is, I think, one of the harder points. I think that's another interesting aspect of kind of looking at indie developers getting in the industry now and looking at kind of the indie dev scene 8 to 10 years ago, was that there was something that's more look at kind of almost fly by the seat of your pants, but very much a wide-eyed, anyone can get into game dev, anyone can do this, or just keep making good games, will keep working. And one of the things I think we've really have seen, again, has been this tightening all around the game industry. Again, we're recording this just in the beginning of August of 2024, and this year it will probably be one of the worst years in terms of layoffs, in terms of the scope of the game industry and game dev. And sustainability, I think, is one of the more important aspects, and something that I think a lot more indie devs, even from a solo dev to even a small 10 to 15 or even fewer person team, have been really thinking about lately. Because again, if you get one game out, but it costs you your entire studio, you're not going to be able to make another game after that.
Yeah, interesting take on that for me. There's a few things. There's definitely a constricting of the industry. You definitely see in AAA and AA, but also in the lack of publishing.
Oh, yes.
Okay, like Alien Boom, like 4 months into my game, when I had like shittier art, shittier design things, I actually had publishers talk to me. And now, like, that's completely dried up. Not that I want it, to be honest. I don't. It would have to be like, definitely not for this game, especially. But I don't think I want that. And that. So yeah, there's the constricting of the industry. It sucks. I feel bad for everyone who has all these skills. There's seniors and juniors and intermediates. Who wants to move to California to take a job that they get laid off in a year? It's crazy. It's going to hurt the game industry. It's going to hurt AAA. In the next 3, 4, 5 years, you're going to start seeing it. There's going to be less games. They're going to be lower quality. And the thing that I would say, and again, not to be smug and to feel like, and not to, again, this is like a selfish thing, but I think indie developers are going to, the ones that really like take advantage of it and have a good skill set and can make the right games, they're going to be ones that end up winning in this, what's happening, I think. Because there's also a shift in what people want to play, and people are a lot, like the whole illusion of AAA masterpiece set games, like these giant billion-dollar games. People are like, I can have fun playing Dread Delusion. Like, I can have fun playing Cultic. I can have fun playing like any of the New Blood games, right? Like, and these games don't take as many people to make, right? So like where I'm at least angling myself is I'm trying to build up my whole skill set. I want to be able to build a game of a certain depth, but also a certain visual quality, and I'm definitely further away in the art department than I am in like my programming chops, but I'm getting there. So like the future that I see, especially with the tool sets we're getting, right? Like they're way better than they were 5 years ago. They're way better than they were 10 years ago, and they constantly get better. But what I see happening is a lot more teams that have less than 10 people actually making things people want to play. And yeah, they're not getting necessarily a billion sales, but they're getting enough sales to sustain another 5 years of work for that small team. And that's where I want to find myself, is like, I want to find myself being able to hire an artist hiring a full-time artist who can do 3D and textured, like really a hybrid of a bunch of roles, maybe hiring one other person, having like a 3-person team. Like I built like Alien Boom Boom, I built this over the last year and a half in my spare time. I have a child, 3-year-old child. I have responsibilities. I have a salaried position as a software engineer. I have other responsibilities. I don't get all that much time to work on things, right? If I could do where I'm at right now in a year and a half, I can just build levels now, and like I probably have 2 months of solid work I need to do, and I could release this game. That's where I'm at. And if I can do that in what I would say is like actually 6 months full-time work, like imagine if I had an artist with me and I didn't have to figure out all that piece, and I had another person who's like a generalist float person. Like what can you do? Like I think small teams can build really unique ideas that can at least compete on some level, not with the big games, but there's a piece of there's a pond there that can sustain them.
Yep.
And I think as long as you're smart with that, right? And you're not blowing your money, and you're not like, oh, I just made $1 million. Let's go and hire 10 developers and make my dream game. Now you're getting into that trap.
Yeah.
But so that's what I want. Like I'm being greedy about it. Like I'm being selfish and greedy. I'm just trying to build a sustainable place for myself to a point where, like, really, if I end up owning a home, if I can eventually pay for my home and get to a place where I can just sell, like I could just do a little bit of work for someone else, like contracting work, then I could just build games the rest of my life. So I just need to get to a certain financial place, and I could just build games the rest of my life, do some contracting work. That's what I want to do. That's where I want to get to. And I think that's maybe where the industry's going a little bit. You're going to see a lot less There's going to be like a few giant AAA games. They're going to be like your flagpole games, shipping games for maybe Sony and Microsoft. Maybe we don't get another Xbox. I don't know. Maybe the next Xbox, the last one. That's the other thing too. What's going to happen there?
Yep.
I don't know. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of money thrown away in game development, and I think everyone knows that now. And all the investors are like, and also like, screw them. Like, I don't. As much as we have like the Red Dead Redemption 2, and that's amazing, that might be the best game. I don't know where you sit on how good Red Dead Redemption 2 is, but from a technical and from an achievement standpoint, from art, direction, techno, like all these things, like that's one of the biggest and most amazing simulation sort of games that exists. And I don't know if we ever get that back. I don't know. I don't know if we get another Skyrim. Skyrim might be the last open, like that might be the last best one. It actually might, like, you never know. Who knows, right? Like, that's what's actually kind of crazy, because like the cost of building these AAA and always pushing the level on AI and experiences, like, I don't know, unless the tech changes. I think actually the next leap will be AI, and that sucks, and I know people don't want to hear that, and I don't want to hear that. But that's probably the next leap. In probably 20 years, I'd say even 20 years, like, where we actually get that true AI, like, general intelligence that can just think of something, you tell it to do it, boom, it just, like, programs you this experience, and on some new sort of technology platform that's not even just, like, 3D models, but it's, like, literally just throwing pixels at it in whatever the AI black box way it does. I think that might be the next real leap, where we actually end up in, like, those, everyone, the holy grail is like the virtual reality spaces where you're in like this whole other experience, right? I'm not sure we're going to build that with the tech that we have now. It's like, I think there's a whole other leap. It's like when GPUs came onto the scene, right? Like, pre-GPUs, there was no 3D as we know it. GPUs came, it exploded. And I think there's like a hardware or AI sort of leap somewhere that we need to take now to be able to actually sustainably make these newer, bigger experiences in games that people want. Like, people want Skyrim times 10. They want NPCs that have real jobs and relationships and do the minutiae of a human. Like, that's where people think games are going, and that's where we thought we'd be right now. We think about MMOs. Where we were, like, EverQuest was such an amazing experience for the people who experienced it, and then WoW came out, and WoW's still the pinnacle of experience. And in so many ways, that game only degraded, in fact, from where it came from. 20 years ago, 15 years ago, everyone thought, like, MMOs, we'd be living in this crazy MMO. Like, I'm going to be addicted to the greatest fantasy MMO. And, like, we're still playing WoW. Like, I think, we've hit a plateau, I think, for things. And all that to say that people are realizing we don't even need that. Like, what we need is older school just experiences. Like, it's fine if the graphics aren't like the most killer. And by the way, as a solo dev, you can still make really good games with really great graphics. You're not going to be competing with God of War or whatever, but you can still do pretty good. It's all about the aesthetic in the end, right? Chrono Trigger is still a beautiful game, right? Super Mario for Nintendo, Super Nintendo, the Mario 4, I guess, right? Super Mario World. That game's actually it looks good, right? Yeah. But back in the day, you got an N64 and you're like, oh, Super Mario 64. That's where it is now. Like, that's where we're at. Like, I don't know, like, what holds up? Like, Into the Past holds up, and Ocarina of Time holds up, and I don't know. Anyways, there's the rant. Is that I think we're coming back. We're contracting now, and we're realizing, like, design and focus of experience is just as good, if not better, than the latest of tech. And fuck the investors that don't care about games either.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? That's what sucks. All these layoffs are because of those people and all the investors, and it sucks.
Yep. And I think it gets to the point that, again, from Strange Scaffold, Xavier Nelson was talking about in an interview, I think a few months ago, about trying to really build a sustainable studio. Like, I think he recently did that with he did another interview about his latest game, Click Holding, however it's pronounced, where he said,
yeah.
and he said, I think something like really apt, like this game only costs I forget how much he said, it was like a really low number. He said, yes, somewhere there's like a $5 million version or whatever, like super high version of this game, but that's not what we wanted to make. That's not what we could feasibly make. And again, it's at that point where, like, for like some studios, like as you said earlier, like if the game could make like you said like 5,000 copies sold, like that would be like fantastic for you. Like there are again AAA studios are like, oh, this game only sold 10 million copies. Well, it's a it's a horrible game that it didn't meet our metric. And I'm sure for every developer watching this right now, all the indie devs, like I'm sure you would complain about 10 million copies sold in your game.
And, I mean, you wouldn't complain about 5,000 if you could sustainably make a game, sell a $15 game and get 5,000 copies. Like that's a intermediate level developer salary. That's like not too bad, and it only grows from there, right? I think that's the thing about indie development is that like you're just growing your audience. Yeah, and that's how you eventually get to maybe that $50,000, like 50,000 game, because like you have audience, they love it. The minute you release a game, their day one purchases, that propels you up in the ranks. It's long-term effort over short-term effort for sure.
Yep. But again, like surviving long enough to get to that point, that's always the hard part for a lot of developers. And like as like some like the like more like saddest like news, again, like we've seen developers over the last like 5 to 7 years that have come out with like amazing first time games. And then the studio closes maybe 2 to 3 games later. And it's very hard. And I'm working on like a presentation on this topic I want like to like do sometime about understanding how to measure a game's success. Because again, like you'll have people who will look at a game and go, well, it sold all these copies, so yeah, it must have been this, we can all retire to private islands success for the studio. But no. And again,
Yeah, but there's a piece here that like I think a lot of people they gloss over this piece. There's a lot of there's a lot of stories where a studio, maybe 1, 2, 5, 10 people, small studio makes a pretty good game, right? Mm-hmm. They get a publisher, or maybe they're self-published, and it hits. Boom, it's great. And then someone comes along and says, "I will give you this money to purchase your IP in your studio," and someone's winning there, right? Like someone's winning there. So as much as like it sucks that these studios eventually get canned, and they always do. Every studio that gets bought up, it's like eventually always like 90% of them they end up being the thing that gets cut later. But someone made money there, like right? Like the founder of that studio made their bag and they retired. And that is the truth of it, right? And that sucks for everyone else working in the studio. No, that wasn't the founder. But that founder did make they didn't have to sell. They did sell. And because of that, so like there's this sustainability piece. But it's tough to sustain 10 people. Like I even see this too. Like I see 300 people laid off and this and that. My heart breaks every time I see this. I don't want to be in that position. I do everything in my power to like be risk averse in my life, right? But I see this and I go, well, unionize, first of all. If you're going to work for a big company, I really hope to see more unions. And I've seen our first big union start now, I guess, for Blizzard.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing. Because what it really comes down to is when someone at the top can get their bag, they will. And that's just human nature. That's human nature. And it sucks. And that sucks for everyone. But that's like, we don't all own the means to the production of games. And I don't know what to do about that. And then like people need to try to unionize, I think. I think at this point, like the film industry is completely unionized. And that helps people, right? So I really hope that's something that can happen in the games industry on some level. And that, people respect that. But who knows where it's going. And anyways. It's just funny because like I see this a lot on Twitter, right? Every time there's a big layoff, I see other small studios going like, "We'll never do that to our people." And it's like, what do you mean you'll never do that to your people? You're one game away Like, you can't pay 10 people for more than 2 or 3 years from that last game. I know how much game that sold. Like, what do you mean you can't? Like, it's just an inevitability. It's tough if you're trying to like sustain other people's livelihoods as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's hard decisions that have to be made, and you're one game away from failing. And that's like a reality of this. It's a reality of this business.
Yeah.
Like, overextending. And everyone does it. AAAs, indies, everyone wants to do it. Everyone does it.
Yeah, and this is the prerequisite time to mention that everyone needs to watch again Jay Burkett's GDC talk about how to survive in game dev without having a massive hit. Because again, I think it's over 15 years old at this point, but it still rings true for a lot of developers.
Yeah. He has a lot of harsh takes, and I think they're good though. Like, yep. I think we live in an idealist. Like, there's a lot of idealists right now, especially online, and that's good. And I don't want to sound like an asshole, like, but that's also not like the jungle we live in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's risk involved, and then there's ways to be averse to risk. And I think like some people make it by not caring about the risk, and they get that bag, and most people don't though. So,
yep, and it is a very risky industry. Again, like, I've always had more on the realist side when it comes to this stuff. I would love for every game to succeed well and do all that, but at the end of the day, there's only so many hours in a day you can experience a game, so many consumers of a game, and if, again, like, there are games that do everything right, and they still end up failing, just as there are games that can mess up or not be perfect, but still go on to become a viral sensation.
Yeah, the virality of a game sometimes is unfair.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, like, I'm idealist in this sense. I think that if you actually make something, if you hone your skills enough to be able to make something that can fit a niche or a gap that exists in the market,
mm-hmm.
You have to align your passion and find that gap. And you have to make compromise from both ends and try to fill that void. And I think if you do that enough, just like having the edge at like the house edge, right? In gambling type thing. If you know that if you're going to gamble and 60% of the time you're going to win, yeah, there's going to be a lot of losses there, but eventually you're going to start, the law of big numbers comes into play, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm like banking on that for myself, and I enjoy doing it, and I have a full-time job anyways, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But like, this is my hobby, and I put a lot of time and effort into it, and I do believe that if you make something, if you build it, they will come, as long as that thing is good enough. I know there's always going to be examples people point to, like, that game's great, and then people should have played it. But then, like, to be honest, I haven't seen too many examples of games that were like exceptional from like a point of view where there's actually a market that would actually think that game's exceptional. I think, like, as long as there's still like a little bit of a market or something, and your game's good enough, I think you're gonna find some sales.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to believe that. And there's like one like little thing to what you're saying is people like with their time, energy, and this that, like, there are two economics now to like whether or not someone wants to purchase your game, and I think the money is actually the smallest one. And it's time. Time is the biggest currency. That's your biggest currency right now. As a retailer or a retail purchaser of video games, it's not the money, it's the time. So if my game, and that's the thing. I think a lot of developers don't realize this. And I think you have to realize this early on, unless you're going to be the idealist going for that big shot, risk-free venture or super risky venture, and maybe make it. But it's not that like your game's not like worth $10. Like, I'm sure a lot of games are worth $10. It's worth it. It really is for like the entertainment someone probably will get. It's worth it. And in a void, in a vacuum, without all the other games, it's probably worth $1,000. Really, if the only game that ever existed was, I don't know, World of Warcraft and Counter-Strike and Final Fantasy 3, if those are the only 3 games that exist in the world, they'd be worth $1,000 each, and a $100 subscription a month to WoW. Like, it would actually be worth it compared to what you spend your money on other things, right? Other entertainment Like, I'll go to the theater once in a while and I'll spend that $50. It's crazy. I'll go to a restaurant nowadays. The prices of restaurants, you literally just order a hamburger and fries and a drink from like a regular restaurant, and you could basically buy like a game, like on sale, right? And all I did was just like eat some food that I felt guilty about eating, compared to having a game that I could have like 1,000 hours in, or 100 hours, or 200 hours, right?
Yeah.
So like the worth of a game it's not that, it's the time. You're competing with people's time. Like, is it worth my time to play a game? Because I don't care about the price. I care about, like, and even people who don't have that much money, they're mostly still like, should I spend my time on this? Like,
yeah. And again, it's someone who covers these games. There's not enough time to play every single video game that comes out. It is impossible. And people are, as you said, I think I agree, they're very much more time conscious than they were like 10, 15 years ago. Again, 15, 20 years ago, we weren't getting 30 to 50 games being released daily. It just wasn't going to happen. You had the time to kind of dig into these games. Like, today, if your game annoys someone within 5 seconds of loading it up, that's it. They don't need to wait. They don't need to go, well, it's annoying now, maybe we'll get better. No, it's, nope, refund. I have, here's my 100-game backlog. I can go to any one of these titles. And I think it's why we've seen this kind of very much as like a feast or famine for a lot of game sales. Like, you'll see games that come out and they'll get thousands of reviews. They'll just immediately show up on the Steam sale or store.
Yeah.
And then there are games that they come out and they get 10 reviews, 5 reviews.
Yeah.
And again, going back to that point about viability, it is like such a huge deal when it comes to marketing these games. You have to do a lot right in order to get your...
This is why I think, like, actually, like, to be successful going forward, unless again you're doing that lottery shot, you got to find that market and do some research and be like, does this make sense? Am I novel enough? Am I actually offering an experience that's different enough from all the other games that exist that are on sale for $2 or for $50? Like, you know what I mean? Like, Skyrim you can buy for like $15 sometimes, right? Like, why would you make a Skyrim like as a solo? You know what I mean? Like, why if the I don't even particularly like Skyrim. It's a pretty good game. I enjoy it. I want to play more of it one day, but I haven't even beat it, right? I'm just trying to throw it out there. Like, if you're just trying to go in, and this is where like Alien Boom Boom, it's like, I know where my mistake was. Is like, I'm every other game. I'm every other FPS game that doesn't have something special. So like, my new strategy is get it out 5 levels. It's going out for like $10. Maybe even like 8, like 10 Canadian, and that's it. And I don't care, and I'm fine with that, because like, my new thing going forward is what is that game hook? What is that game mechanic? What is that theme? What is that novelty where people go like, interesting. No one's done that before, and that used to be like not as important. In fact, it might have even been a detriment to your game even 5 years ago. Because people would be like, oh, I don't quite get it. But now that's what people want. Because like, that's the only way to actually set yourself apart. Even if people don't want it, you have to set yourself apart from every other FPS game, every other RPG, every other side scroller. And that's a tough one with the side scroller and Metroidvanias and all that. Like, it's tough to set yourself apart there. It's one of the harder genres to crack, unless you do something different.
Yeah, so, don't get me started on those. We'll be here for another hour or two.
That's where I'm at, yeah.
And again, like, that unique selling point is such an important aspect, because again, anyone can play an Elden Ring. We can play an Armored Core. We can play a Mario. We can play a Doom, a Dusk, whatever, because those games are out. How does your game stand out? And it goes with a topic I'm thinking about with discussing friction in games, and how that has become another very important aspect of kind of distinguishing one title from another. But again, it goes with this whole point about how you need to have an answer to this one question. Why should someone play your game? Again, it's a very simple question, but it's not a simple answer.
And that can be answered, I think, in a few ways. Like, and this is where I'm at. Like, I've been thinking about this for like 2 or 3 years now, and like devouring anything to do with like marketability of games and all this. And then I still ended up making Alien Boom Boom, which is like maybe one of the tropiest, like most saturated genres now, other than like the side scrollers, but that's fine. It was always to prove I can make a full game, and I'm not going to worry too much about a game. That's fine. But so I think like where I've landed is there's a few ways to get eyes on a game, and the one is that George Broussard idea, the pond, and maybe he got it from somewhere else. And I've heard this sentiment before, so it's not like new, but like go for your pond. Like there's a small pond of people who really want another Kingsfield, who really want like another Bubsy or whatever, or who really want another Earthworm Jim type of thing. Like there's a game that they played 20 years ago that there's only 2 other games like it, and the minute another game comes out and says like I'm like this game, you're gonna have, if you can reach that audience, they're gonna want to buy your game. That's like one way, and I think that's actually a piece of it for my future games, is finding like those niches and those not filled, like, you know, that they haven't been filled by modern games. But then the other one is can I sell my game, and this is like ripped off of a GDC talk from like 5 years ago. Can I sell my game in a GIF? Like, how viral can I make this GIF of a game? This vertical slice, how viral can I make this 5-second idea? Like that hook. How viral can I make it? And if you can't like get excitement for like early prototypes of your game with just a little bit of polish on it, I think your game's dead on arrival. And I think that's my new thing. Like for this next game idea I have, I'm super excited about it. There's like a theme, and I'd love to talk about it again one day in the future. But like there's a theme. It's definitely like in that first person fantasy hack and slash thing. I actually think there's a whole bunch of people thirsty for those games, because anytime I talk about this, people are like Loon Acid, Dread Delusion, Kingsfield, and then I'm like, yeah, but what else? And they're like, nothing else. Like there's a few other ones, and they had pretty good sales on Steam too, but I forget their names. But there's like 5 games like that exist in the last 15 years that are like of quality that people would actually want to play. So it's like, that's a good thing. Maybe think about that. And then second, can I also make people who don't know about that, can they be excited by just like this vertical slice that I have? And if you don't have that, I think you don't have, I don't know, I think that's an important thing. You almost might as well just go to the next game at that point. It's like, you might as well, if you can't throw up a Steam page and immediately get people excited, and if you can't go on Twitter and like within the first 3-4 months of sharing some actual decent progress, I'm not talking about early stuff. I'm like, you've done a little bit of work on it, and you've got a nice little, you can sell your idea at least in a small video or a GIF or something. If you can't do that, you're done.
Yep.
Like realistically, again, there's always the people who are idealistic and like gotta love them, and they don't care. They don't care what's going to happen. They just want to do it. It's their passion. And good. I'm not talking to that person. I'm talking to the person. I'm talking to myself. All of this is just me. This is like my ideas for me that I want to try to, I want to try to be successful. Which means like I don't necessarily make my passion game. My passion game is maybe in 10 years when I've made a little bit of money and success off of all this. Then I make my passion game. Until then, I put about 50% of my passion, and I only still choose genres that I would like to play myself or know about, right? Like, I'm not going to make something I don't know anything about. There's this game, Caves of Cud. That's like this like roguelike type game, right? It's incredible. It's fascinating. I follow the developers. Like, incredible. I would never play that game. I know it's not for me. But I would, like... And part of me goes like, I would love to make that game, but at the same time, it's like, no, I'd be terrible at making a game like that because like I'm not passionate about playing it. So you kind of have to find like this mix of like, what could you actually do well? What could you bring new to it? Where's the market fit? And visually, can you sell it in a 10-second GIF?
Yep.
I think if you can align all that stuff, then I think you're actually on a path to like, and be able to throw shit out. Because if you can't align on that, and then you realize, oh shit, it's not working, and you don't just go to the next thing, well, you're going to spend 2.5 years now in this game that's going to fail.
So, I guess to kind of like go into like our wrap-up for tonight. So, we're recording this again, just at the beginning of August. For Alien Boom Boom, do you have an estimated release date or anything tentative for the game?
realistically, it's going to be early 2025. If everything aligns, it'll be December 2024. So, but realistically, I see how things change. Winter, I get way more done. Summer, it's tougher. It's hot. Like just being in the heat, like just slows me down. Like literally, my brain just like mush. But yeah, early 2025 would be the realistic bet. Aligned with, of course, the Next Fest and all those rules. So whenever that is, it'd be coming out a few weeks after Next Fest. Probably the first Next Fest into 2025. I imagine I'll have a demo in there, and then the game will release within a month or two of that.
All right. And, of course, it's all going to be on Steam. Any other platforms you're aiming for?
Just Steam. Yeah, right now it's just like that's the 95% of the market is there. So
and
that's just the realistic, yeah.
And normally this is the point in the interview where I ask, what is your next game idea you've been thinking about, but I think you've already answered that one throughout this conversation.
Yeah, I've had a lot of ideas, but it's definitely I want to talk about a little more. And I know it's crazy because like people are always like, oh, it's the idea, like it's about the execution, and I believe that too. But like, there's an idea I have specifically around the theme of this game, and I know that like if I said it, I actually am worried someone would take it because it's interesting. It's an interesting, like a theme, thematically where the game exists and how that can play out in terms of like even how you traverse the world. It's there, so maybe I'll have more to talk about it when I'm a little bit more in the design of it and some concrete things to share. But
all right. So before we end things for tonight, David, anything else regarding Alien Boom Boom's design, development, anything that you've been working on you would like to touch on that we missed?
Yeah, like I would just say that like if anyone, and it's very unlikely that anyone watching this has actually played the demo other than you, just because that's how numbers work. But the original demo I released that even you played is not like the level's still the same for the most part, but there's actually substantial changes. One, the art is completely like it's overhauled. So the models are all the same, but I did a whole texture overhaul. I took it away from, it was a little bit leaning into like a retro realism, and I actually pulled it a lot more into stylized art. I think it just looks better. The demo looks a lot better. I fixed a lot of feedback that I had from the Steam forums, and even just when you played, you had feedback that I wrote down and I fixed. Things like weapon sway, being able to like hit 1, 2, 3 and swap your weapons and stuff. There's still a little bit to fix there, but it's way tighter. I added the first iteration of the slow-mo, so the Max Payne style effect. Right now, you basically it's just tied to your dash, so you basically just stamina and you wait and you get it back, but it's going to be tied. I'm going to build that into like, as you kill stuff, you collect basically the ability to go slow-mo again, so you have to be kind of tactical with it, but it also like allows you to use it, because if you just hold on to it and kill more enemies, then you've wasted the chance of it. And I'm actually kind of building the gameplay now around like maybe the slow-mo piece. It's really fun. Like the slow-mo added like a whole other dimension to the game that actually kind of makes it stand apart from a lot of other first-person shooters that don't have slow-mo. So if you have played it, play it again, because it feels very different, and I would love it's always great to get feedback from where it is. So that's my sort of shout out update. And I'm working on new levels right now, and they're going good. I should probably get maybe a level and the like a complete level every month, basically, which brings me to like December, January. And December I get 2 weeks off, 3 weeks off for work. So that means like I could probably do a level a week, in fact. Like so that's what I'm saying. Probably early 2025.
All right. So I think with that, David, we will wrap things up for tonight. And when you start working on your Kingsfield inspired game, definitely we can certainly do another chat about that, or about any other design topics that pop up. It's always great to have a returning guest pop back on for these casts.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. Thanks.
All right. So, do you have anything you'd like to say to the fans, anyone who's been checking you out and following you, anything to kind of take us out on?
Not too much. I appreciate everyone who's been following me, mostly on Twitter. So I guess maybe some people are purely through Steam. So if you're one of those people who are actually watching this, that's like thanks so much for following. And there's only better things to come, honestly. Like I'm proud of Alien Boom Boom. It's my first thing, and I'm gonna finish it, and it's gonna be released. And really, it's just about content now, putting in the game. But just say yes, like thanks for being there, and I hope my future games are compelling as well.
All right. So for social media wise, and you like to mention, Twitter, X, Facebook, whatever.
Yeah, Twitter, x.com. You can find me at Indie, spelled INDIE, game Dav, DAV, which is actually like a play on my name, David A. Vallieres. So Indie Game Dev, at Indie Game Dev. Or just write in Alien Boom Boom Dev in Google, and I think you'll find it if you just like write that in with Twitter. And wishlist. Play the demo and wishlist, of course. Alien Boom Boom on Steam.
All right. But I think with that, we'll wrap things up for our chat tonight. David, again, best of luck with Alien Boom Boom, and I'll be happy to check it out when the game is released.
Absolutely. Thanks.
All right. So for everyone watching, we're going to end things here for our chat. If you're new to the YouTubing stuff, check out the Discord, Patreon, buy all the books, watch all the videos, do all that great stuff. You'll find links to Alien Boom Boom and David's social media in the description down below, so be sure to check that out. And again, if you are a developer working on a new or upcoming game and want to come on to talk about it or talk about game dev, I am always looking for a guest for this series. So with that said, everyone, come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where you examine the art and science of games.